I would say that the difficulty of a new forecast depends on how much data you already have to go on. If it's an already launched product, you may have observed trends, seasonality, even how it responds to past events. But for a launch forecast, you don't have any of that. At best, you may have an analog of something else in the class, but you're not going to have data on that particular product or how your company has adjusted strategies in the past. I would say like my last answer, the data part comes from analogs of past launches. It comes from experiences with past launches, and the it depends on how much data you have to fit. And generally, there's not going to be a lot. So you would say that most of that data is going to come from expert launches or from expert judgment, I should say, which means, past launch forecasts in that disease state, things that have gone well, things that have gone poorly. And again, the more precedents there are to draw on, the easier it is. We've seen forecasts and things like gene therapy that have a completely different treatment model, it being like a one-time thing, completely different payment model. We've seen a lot of those be wildly off because again, there's so little judgment both in your head and on Excel spreadsheets to draw from. Scenario planning, oftentimes it's done as a base, best, worst case. But the problem is that each of those rolls together a lot of assumptions that may not correlate with one another. Rather than something that simple, I prefer to do it as, okay, if A happens, then what will be the revenue impact? If B happens, and those are discrete events. What if there's a delay in approval, a delay in getting reimbursement? What if competitor data comes out better or worse? And kind of have those as a waterfall that can layer onto a forecast and something give something realistic rather than a constellation of assumptions that may not even be correlated with one another. And with respect to uncertain or emerging markets in particular, there needs to be even more assumptions made. One of the challenges in I'm going to take emerging markets literally and refer to markets beyond the big eight, the US, EU4 plus UK, Japan, and China. You need a lot of local intelligence to know, okay, what is the payer situation on the ground? What is what is the rate of uptake? Who can pay for something like this? Like for example, when I was doing work in the weight loss space, reimbursement for weight loss therapies right now it's hotly contested even in the major markets. In the smaller emerging markets, it's often going to be self-pay. So that's something that needs to be forecasted in as well. And even in bigger markets like Japan and China, there is a lot of reliance on local intelligence, people on the ground and local sources on the ground. I alluded to a couple of those rather than a base best worst scenario. They need to cover things that will actually happen and what will be the differential impact if, say, A and B but not C happen, or A and C but not B. They need to cover realistic scenarios, and I think the failure to do that is a big cause of missed forecasts. The other thing is that when people do these base best worst scenarios, they tend to come in a very narrow band. In a launch forecast, you're not looking at 10, 20, 30% market share as your worst base best, you could be looking at, 5%, 20%, 60%. So a lot of forecasts and a lot of ranges of forecasts are just too narrow, and they also need to be drawn around a lot more things. Oncology is pretty well defined from sources like cancer impact of what the population is. But if you're looking at, say, a rare disease, you see rare disease prevalence estimates in literature that can cover a factor of 10 or more. So you need to draw a lot larger error bars around every assumption in order to get a reliable launch forecast, depending on the less you know. Oftentimes within the company, you think, okay, we've done so much market research. We know how physicians are going to respond. We know this, we know that, but none of that ends up coming true. So, it's a level of humility and knowing what you don't know, as the saying says. I'm looking forward to, not just passing along the knowledge that I have, but meeting new exciting people, learning new methodologies to refine my craft, and like with a forecast, learning what I don't know. I'm particularly interested in AI driven approaches that I think, especially with respect to launch or pipeline forecasting, AI has been not very well incorporated as of yet. So I'm looking at ways to do so, ways to integrate third-party data sources, and in the end, better match supply and demand.